Good morning, everyone. Hey, welcome to day 2 of the CFES Brilliant Pathways Annual Conference. And I really have to thank you. Remember, we ended last night with Dr. Calvin Mackey talking about hope, and I shared my hope that you came back. Thank you. How was yesterday? Thumbs up, sideways, down? Good. Isn't it refreshing to come back and no matter what's going on in our communities and the world around us, to be with people that are inspiring, that have passion, their stories, and truly give us hope. You know, for years, I was a middle school principal, and I'd come to these after opening school, doing things. I kind of get worn out, kind of get tired. Then you get into the mundane, you come back with some of your staff. It's like, hey, I have a sense of purpose. And that's what we hope you do when you leave later today, have a sense of purpose. We covered a lot yesterday. Consuelos was awesome, wasn't she? Right. It was just amazing how she could pick up the details of Tara's shoes and highlight that with us. So Tara's in the back. Check her out today, see what she's wearing. And then Dr. Mackey, huh? Oh my gosh. I came in, I was a little bit tired, to be honest with you. You know, it was like a little bit of information overload, all on a positive note. And boy, did I get juiced up with him going 100 miles an hour. He never started at 0. But that's what we're doing. And we're replicating it today. You know, we're going to wrap up at 11 o'clock with our keynote of Ray McNulty. And I really say, don't miss that one either. He just does an amazing job. He's been a longtime friend of CFES. And boy, it's going to pull it together just like last year. And we're going to go out here full of gas. So where we go today, we're going to start off in a moment with a panel discussion, looking at embracing. The word's embracing, not coping, not managing, embracing the new beginnings for college and career readiness. Then we'll have a quick little break. We'll go into our breakout sessions that are only an hour today. And then we'll come back at 11 o'clock for the keynote, a quick little wrap up. We'll have lunch and be on your way. Sounds like a pretty good morning, huh? Those of you that if you haven't checked out, if you could find a way to check out by 11-ish, that's what they told us, 11-ish. Anybody needs a little bit more time, like to noon or 12:30, come see me and we can work on arrangements for you. And I know we've got some folks from Hawaii that are staying because they've got a real late flight tonight. And my understanding is the folks from the furthest west were the last ones to leave the social last night from Caldwell. So aloha, our friends from Hawaii. Just a last note is, and I forgot it's on my finger, kind of. Somebody found this beautiful ring outside. It's a silver ring. It doesn't fit me. Heather, thank you for finding it and turning it in. Come see me if you have it. I'll be right over. So, hey, it's a true privilege to turn it over to my colleague and good friend, Leroy Nesbitt, to kick off the morning session with our upcoming panel. Leroy, let's go.
Good morning, everyone. You know, all too often, we thank all kinds of people who are at our conference, who do things. But you know, I just want to say, I want to thank Ron, who stands up here and gives us all the information. Let's give him a round of applause. He stepped up. There he is. So I should ask now our panelists to come on up and have a seat. You can sit wherever you like.
Thanks.
It is indeed my pleasure to stand before you. Oh, let me do it. Let me do one check-in thing. Mr. Salter, are you with us?
I am. Thank you very much, Leroy.
Good morning. So it's indeed a pleasure to stand before you and for this particular panel. Today is an important day in America, as you know, and I hope we all have voted one way or the other. So embracing new beginnings, that it's appropriate for today. But it's not just about embracing new beginnings, it's about readiness. So our panel is here to get us ready. So I want to begin by just introducing them first. And out in California, correct? We have Maurice Salter, board member of the ECM Foundation and the former chair of the University of California at Los Angeles, famous college, university. We also have Dr. Kleena Hannon, the former director of Trinity Access, who's done such great work with CFES, and who is also a visiting professor at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And our good friend, Dr. Scott Thomas, who's the Dean of Education at the University of Wyoming. And again, I'm Leroy Nesbitt from CFES. So again, I hope you all enjoyed everything yesterday. I know that I did. And I know that yesterday, the session got me to think about more of what we need to do. It truly is a time of change. It truly is a time of change. And of all the change of current events, there are those futurists who talk about a possible fourth industrial revolution. And those futurists who talk about a change in the nature of work that we've all seen every day. Some people are even asking if people are even going to work in 2015 because they'll all be replaced by machines. But our job, as we think about what the world will become, is to develop pathways for our students. And that begins with us understanding these new paradigms and these new readiness. So I've got a couple of slides that I want to start with. If I can find the clicker. So I didn't know how to approach this, so I went and looked at stuff at the Department of Labor, and then I decided to look at something called Indeed, which is a very popular way of finding employees. And I wanted to see what the top jobs were in 2022. And this is just a piece of what our conversation will be about. But here are some of the top jobs in 2022. Now, here are some of the predicted jobs from Indeed for 2050. Now, there's only one that's really important for us, right? Look at this. Indeed says in 2050, an essential skills consultant will be a top job. Are we not ahead of the game? So I want to tell you all who are teaching these young people essential skills, and we've thought of them as something that they will need. But now we need to think of them as something that they will teach and help others do, because they'll be crucial to a person's survival in the society of 2050. So with that in mind, I want to introduce our panelists. And we're going to begin with Maurice Salter, who will present to you several slides. And Maurice, please do let me know when I need to click to the next slide. And a good morning to you. I hope you've had breakfast.
Well, actually, I'm in New York City right now, so I did, and I'm very sorry that I couldn't be there in person, but I'm very pleased to participate, and thank you for allowing me to do so. So with that, perhaps I should start. By the background, I used the picture behind me is UCLA. Not only did I serve as their chair, I did my undergraduate and my doctoral work there. My doctorate was in higher ed, and my specialty was looking at how students choose their colleges and fields of study, and also how they pay for their education. Those issues have not changed in terms of issues, but as Leroy pointed out, the surrounding future for them is definitely different. I made an observation earlier, which I'd like to reiterate, and that is when we think about today's students, there are a couple of things that we have to remember. Number one, for 2 years. It's just starting this year. They haven't been on a college campus. If they started college 2 years ago, they've been in distance learning, which is now something that is integrated into most curricula. And if they've worked, it's been probably by distance work as well. So the job markets we think about today in terms of historically going to an office or a place of business and working, going to classrooms on a formal college setting have changed dramatically. And I would argue that they're addressing the future and also arguing that they address the present, because college enrollments are not increasing. And if you look the other day in the Wall Street Journal, even programs like the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania is now doing a distance MBA program, and others are following. I'd like to say they're doing it because they see the future. I think they're doing it also because their enrollments are down. And if that's the case and colleges have to address it that way, that's a good outcome. I hope they see the light, but for having done that. But it's important to note that in at least my observations, that students today are facing a different future. One of the areas I would add to what Leroy put up, and that was a very nice slide, is one thing is customer service. I found, I don't know about any of you, but if you take a flight, you go somewhere, wherever you go today, you typically get a customer service survey. You get something to ask how people did that are working with you. And I think training people about how to do that and whether, I don't care what it is, whether it's a job as an engineer, as a waiter in a restaurant, it doesn't really matter. A truck driver, customer service is an integral part of what we have to think about today. I hope we weave that into some of the program training that goes on. The other thing that I want to address is that the program that I'm involved with, ECMC, Education Credit Management Corporation, is one of the top 3 guarantors of federal student loans in the United States. Through ECMC, we have developed a foundation. I'm putting that slide up now, you can see it. And that foundation is a $650 million foundation today, growing to $1 billion in the next 2 or 3 years. And how we did that was we have income that we get for the programs we manage, and we've taken those and invested that money to create revenue and returns that in turn benefit students. And you can see from the slide before you that to date that we've done 25 grants in 323 post-secondary institutions, all dealing with mentoring and coaching students, whether it's on a college campus through a research institute, ways in which different entities and ideas come to serve students. And some of them include grants that are distance learning. In other words, those that like the 6 grants that are noted here. We've done $15 million in grant making to date. The foundation itself, by the way, is based in Los Angeles. ECMC is based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And you can see the target is the first generation, low income, and students of color. And we've done large programs, significant programs that have impact in those areas. We are determined that we want to continue to support those programs in the future. For those of you in the audience who do research, I would urge you to submit grants to the program. Their web pages and staff are there to help people. We want to encourage people to apply for these funds and to expand our audience so that we cover almost every state in the country right now. And I think that there are opportunities. That's one of the reasons I was happy to be able to speak here to get that word out. The other next slide, please, is a program that we funded about $10 million called College Success. This is a mentoring and coaching program, and grantees develop technology-based support systems, and we do a variety of different, I think there are 93 college campuses in this program right now. It's also run in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Education. So we contribute about 10 million a year to that. And then in addition, there are federal funds that are deployed for these programs. Our goal is to continue to offer these programs, but you can see how important mentoring and coaching is to the foundation and the work that I like to see them doing, that I think are components of what future lives are going to look like. And it really doesn't matter whether you go to a career school, you go to 4-year colleges, the work that's been done by brilliant futures, you can tell, is also based on the mentoring concept and ways in which students can better prepare for the future and what helps them to succeed. For example, advising, work study programs that allow them to apprentice and to learn more about the work environment. And one of the big areas that's interesting is financial literacy and budgeting. And I think that's an important component to any program, because students really, when you think about it, they go to college, they receive student aid, they are left often with balances due that are significant. They go to school for 2 or 4 years, whatever number of years, and all of a sudden, 6 months later, they get a bill in the mail that you owe X number of dollars per month to pay back what you borrowed. That is not financial literacy in the least bit. And how you pay for that, how you budget for it, how you utilize those funds are all important components, and it's missing in most programs today. So I think that that's a critical component to how we help students address the future. The other thing is that there's a high percentage of students, doesn't matter what institution they're at, they get to the last year of school or close to graduation and they run out of money. They might be during an academic year too for a crisis or some issue. And I think it's important to know that there are programs available to students to support them in those last days that they need. It's a shame to see them not graduate because they just ran out of money at the end of their education. So that's one of the things that College Success does as well. And these are all programs that are designed to have national impact across all sectors. So I would certainly hope that the word gets out. That's why I think this conference is important too. One last thing I'd like to point out, and that is I tend to have a little study I do. It's more informal, but if you ever have a dinner and you're with people from different kinds of backgrounds, whether they're doctors, engineers, doesn't matter what they are, academics, I always ask one question. This is a study that I'd like to see done. What percentage of what you learn in college, whenever you graduate, do you utilize on a day-to-day basis today? The best I've had so far is 25%. Of what is learned. So when you talk about what we may have learned 20, 30, whatever number of years ago you received your ultimate degree, and what specific information you learned that you use today, it changes. It morphs into being adapted to what the current environment requires you to bring to the job you have. And I think that's really important. So when we talk about the jobs of 2050, I hope that the foundations under which people are learning today help them adapt to those jobs and those requirements of those jobs in the future. And the idea is that we educate students so that they are prepared for the kinds of things and opportunities that they face, but most importantly, that they finish their education in order to do that. We're very, very much committed to do that. And with that, I probably said more than you wanted to hear, but I'm glad that I was able to address you all today. And I'm really happy that there are so many committed people out there doing the good work that you all do. So Leroy, I'm going to turn it back to you at this point, and thank you for allowing me to present today. And thank you to my colleagues too.
Maurice, thank you for that insight. I must ask you a quick question as we've been watching you. Tell us about, what is the building in the background?
It's UCLA, center of the campus, or Royce Hall.
Royce, oh, I like that. My name's Leroy.
Well, I did it for you, Leroy, so I wanted you to have that. I grew up, by the way, I was a first generation college attendee. I grew up in the worst part of Los Angeles. And if it weren't for the university supporting me, I would not have been able to go to college. And I've never forgotten that. And while I've been very fortunate in the aftermath, one doesn't forget how it happened. But in those days, I mean, you could work, I worked 30 hours a week and went to school. You can't do that today. If you're a student today, there's no way you can work 30 hours a week and support yourself in most programs. So we have to find new, quote, pathways for students to get support. And one last thing beyond that is I would hope that we start looking at the fact that students borrowing from the federal government student aid programs has to be addressed. They're over borrowing and they're getting into debt. And that's why you have all these forgiveness programs today. So we have to look at that in the future too.
Thank you. Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, Leroy. Good morning. Buenos dias. Aloha kakayaka. Got that right, didn't I? Yeah. You know, I was coming back into the country recently and standing in line at immigration. And the person in front of me walked up to the booth, and I heard, "So, what do you do for a living?" And I thought, "Oh God, I got to get ready for this question." And it reminded me, got me thinking about work and about jobs. And the answer to the question was about the job, which is distinct from the work. And work is really an activity that involves mental or physical effort that's done towards some end of productivity or some result. And a job is a paid position that you have as part of regular employment, typically. People work while on the job, but not all work is a job. And I think that's important for how we're thinking about the work that we do in this room. Some work is paid when the purpose or result is of value to someone else. I suggest to you that jobs are not our existence, that work is our existence. And work is core to that existence in some important ways. When the ability to perform meaningful work is taken away from us, it's devastating to people, it's devastating to societies, and it's devastating to the economy. And I think this is part and parcel of what we're feeling in America today. And our work is directly tied to this in some important ways. Tomorrow's work, I believe, is less about just doing jobs and more about finding work, because jobs are more transient than we are more transient across jobs than we have ever been. I think there are three core things to focus on as we think forward and think about pathways to what we're talking about, college and career readiness and college and career pathways. I think one of these is developing one's abilities through life. That's lifelong learning, but lifelong learning sounds like old people going back to college to learn. It does, and I think we really need to break that mold. Lifelong learning, we need to continually learn as part of the core activities that everyone needs an opportunity to engage in. Another core opportunity is applying themselves in the skills that they pick up through lifelong learning to making a living, and that's the job part of it. And then the third core activity is vital here. And it's what gives our work meaning, and it's improving the lives of others in some way, shape, or form. So service has to be an important component of work and jobs as we go forward in society. So how did we get here, or how did I get here through that chain of logic of standing behind the person at the passport control booth, Washington Dulles? The next flight that I caught, I got to thinking, okay, how did we get here? And across the arc of time, we've moved from the scientific revolution to the industrial revolution to a very uneven embrace of the information age, with a lot of global variation about who can participate in this information age economy. So my passport control booth in Washington Dulles was very, very different than passport control booths in developing countries in Nicaragua or South America, parts of Asia. And we need to recognize that the economy and the societies that we walk into are experiencing this information age embrace and the effects of the information age in very, very different ways. The work of the industrial age was built on specialization. That's mastery of a discrete set of knowledge and perhaps the ability to perform a set of repetitive tasks designed for production efficiency. Sounds like a kind of sociological explanation of industrial age work, Fordism, Taylorism, and these types of things. But the economy of the information age is fundamentally different, and it threatens these bases of production that we've designed all of our systems around, including our K-12 education system and our post-secondary education system and our continued credentialing systems. I can almost assure you, because I don't know how much longer we're going to be on the planet here, that if your job today can be defined by a single body of knowledge, no matter how arcane, no matter how specialized, or a single set of skills, no matter how specialized, it's going to be done better if it's not already being done better by artificial intelligence and technology. Okay? And we've got to figure out where the human work is in that industrial age model. So the economy of the information age, in my thinking on that second play, demands that we engage in human work. The very human things that artificial intelligence will never be able to do. How do we find the things that distinguish us from increasingly sophisticated technologies that are part and parcel of the information age that we're living in? Rather than mastery of a single body of knowledge, for example, or a set of skills, human work involves developing a wide range of abilities and being able to apply them to solve complex problems in dynamic settings. Think about the AI algorithm that can solve complex problems in dynamic settings that have a human dimension to them. What do you do for a living? The idea of human work doesn't fit neatly in any one occupational category from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which has, I think, 848 or something occupational categories from an industrial era. We have an industrial system of education that we've been talking a lot about over the last, seems like it's 3 days. It's 3 great days. Those aren't dog days over the last 12 hours. But we have an industrial system of education that's struggling to fit in an information age set of work and occupational needs. And this is one part of the profound labor market challenges that we're facing post-COVID. Part of this is post-COVID. Part of this is post-industrial age transformation to an information economy and a globalized society that's turned the economy on its end. And we're thinking about what skills and traits do we need to be successful in this brave new world. So let's think about that. What will we do? Human work in relation to industrial age occupations and categories is difficult to really make sense of. Rather than 873 occupational categories from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, how about 4 broad types? And Leroy, when we started, I didn't ask you to put my slides up. You got my slides ready there somewhere? Maurice, I see you up there, Maurice. And no, that's not me.
Those are Maurice's. Can we
Maurice's.
switch to the second set?
Okay, while Leroy is finding the slides, a dear colleague and friend and enabler of ours, Jamie Marasotis, who is president of the Lumina Foundation, recently wrote a book called Human Work. And in that book, rather than the 873 BLS occupation categories, Jamie offers 4 different categories of human work that might replace the 873 BLS categories. The first of these are helpers. And there's a great slide when you can see it. Maurice, we're looking at you, so you might want to draw this on a whiteboard for us, Maurice. The first category of human work labor is the helper category. And these are mental health experts. These are people who are engaged in deep personal interactions that artificial intelligence technology will never get us near. That's quintessentially human in nature. So helpers are our first category. Second category are the bridgers. And bridgers have deep skill set. Skills are absolutely necessary here. Bridgers have a deep technical skill set. They have a strong interest in the organization, and they move systems along. So they find resources within the organization, they connect them, and they move systems along. A good example of this would be when we think about IT people, we think about, pardon the IT people in the back, but we think about kind of the nerds that handle the sound and all the technical things. But in our IT environments today, you need people that can work with people to solve technical issues. That's a fundamentally human skill. Now that we have a slide up, Leroy, you got the clicker? There you go. There you go. Bridgers, helpers, integrators, and creators. Thank you very much, Leroy. Integrators integrate knowledge, skill, and people across wide ranges of areas in organizations. In creators, we always have creators in the world. They're highly skilled and they draw from pure creativity. So these four broad categories distinguish human work from technical, skill identified, uh, work-centered activity that AI and computing can quite easily do. Teachers in our K-12 systems get this struggle, and they're looking for help in the old structure. The structure that we're currently working in is the old structure, is what I'm suggesting. In Wyoming, we talked to more than 200 teachers over the course of the last 4 months, and we asked them, where do you want your students to be by 2030? And these teachers came back and drew a pretty big map of all the aspirations that they have for our young people in their schools by 2030. These aligned with work that had been done by other bodies in the state around profiles of a graduate and things that we're looking for the future. We didn't stop there. That was just the start. We asked the teachers then, what do you need to be able to do to get those students to where you've set aspirations for their success? And they gave us days of information. We boiled it down to these 8 competencies, or 7 competencies on the slide here. And these competencies that in-service teachers, very experienced teachers, have identified, they weren't exactly what we expected. We expected more like a skill-based, oh, I need help with literacy. Oh, I need help with 8th grade computational thinking. No, they had all that, and they have access to resources that can help them with that. They were asking for very, very real things that were built around learner-centered environments. And learner-centered environments were not the learner-centered environments just of the students. We're going to build things around the learners of the students. These were learner-centered environments that engage the students and the teachers as a learner-centered enterprise. So both were learning at the same time. And from this, we were able to specify 8 competencies that we brought back to all the teachers. They said, yeah, that's what we're asking for. And we're now engaged in building out competency-based micro-learning modules around these outcomes that will be available to teachers across the state. And we will evolve this into another set of programs. And we'll continue to evolve these 7 competencies into a dynamic set of competencies that we can help teachers with across their career, help realize the human work aspects of what's needed in our society and our economy. So new beginnings. Frankly, we're talking about essential skills here in some important ways. These are all human skills that set us apart from AI. And these are our Brilliant Pathways CFES essential skills. As Kelvin points out yesterday, literacy, mathematics, scientific fluency remain essential for us, as do the arts and humanities and the social science. Calvin didn't point that out to us, but I suggest to you that that is quintessentially human as well. What do employers, philanthropy, policymakers, colleges and universities have to do about this? A lot. So we all play a key part in this game. I think colleges and universities need to give everyone the opportunity to develop knowledge, skills, and ability for human work. Success for all of our students has to be a core of that by focusing on what we're learning. I think we would do ourselves a service to more fully embrace competency-based education, more carefully specify pathways and skills frameworks, really figure out what we're going to do with transparent credentials. So what does a baccalaureate in history mean? And how does that relate to a baccalaureate in geophysics? And what can you do with each of those degrees? And how can we set a common framework for understanding what you get from each of these activities that we engage in? Learning passports would be another great opportunity for post-secondary education to engage. For workers, and again, policymakers and philanthropy also play an important role in moving us toward these human skills in an information age economy. But the workers themselves have an obligation. We have an obligation. And workers need to own their own learning, much like we own our own healthcare. We take care of ourselves physically. We need to take care of ourselves intellectually and academically in ways that allow us to be fluid across the many jobs that we will engage in the work we do across our careers. So we need to know and articulate what we can do clearly enough to describe it to our current employers and our future employers in ways that they value. So jobs, skills, awareness, lifelong learning, those are the pathways that I see carrying us forward toward that future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Dr. Hannon.
Great. Okay, I'm going to wait until my slides are up. But yeah, I'm from Ireland, as Leroy explained, and I'm here because about 11 years ago, Rick Dalton landed in my office in Dublin, and we began to figure out a way in which we could learn from each other, which ultimately led to my team and all the schools we worked with in Ireland transposing and adapting the core practices to the Irish landscape. Because odd as it may seem, a lot of the challenges that we encounter in Europe are similar to the challenges you encounter here. So over the last couple of days, I've been traveling with my son, who is a Zoomer. And Zoomers are the generation we're talking about today. So they would be born between 1996 and 2012, roughly age 10 to 25. The maths may be wrong on that, but it's led me to reflecting, you know, how incredibly fortunate I was in my own trajectory. And part of the reason I was fortunate was because of my irritability when I graduated at the concept of going into a job or just work. And I mean, I knew in the abstract that doing a job, a graduate job, you were more likely to have higher earnings, a better lifestyle, longer life expectancy, all of these things. But I still looked around at the jobs that were available and thought, they're not me. And as I saw a lot of my peers kind of peel off into accountancy or law or, you know, whatever it was, finance, I began to feel more and more lonely coming into my mid-20s, as well as, you know, alarming my parents who thought I was never going to work. So, you know, I think what nobody had said to me at the time, my dad was kind of saying, would you just go and bloody work like everybody else does? And what I didn't understand was that for me, what really, really mattered a lot was that my own values, my strengths were aligned with the work I did. I really needed to have a strong sense of purpose and agency in my work. And I think that that is something back then that actually hangs in pretty closely with what Zoomers want from their work life. And it also makes sense because graduates who have that sense of high purpose in their work are 10 times more likely to have higher overall well-being. So, you know, it gives that lifelong benefit. If they feel that purpose, if they feel that connectedness, they're actually going to be happier. And it's a lot nicer to have a happy person around your workplace. Okay, so I'm glad to say my son is still not working. He's working in grad school, but he is leading a values-led life so far. And I think that will serve him very, very well into the future. So if I could just have a look at my own slides, that would be great. In the meantime, maybe I'll do a little jig, if that helps. Yeah, I was going to talk about Zoomers and what matters to them, because I think it's great to look at what industry needs. It's great to look at what higher education needs. But it's really important to start with what young people want and what they think they can contribute to the world, because we're on our way out. You know, I mean, okay, I know it hangs in the balance of what happens in your elections today, but we are on the way to greener pastures, or at least pastures where we'll be sitting down rather than actively working the land. And so I think, you know, we haven't done a tremendous job of leaving a good world behind us. I feel a sense of responsibility and guilt about that. And I think we're not really modeling great leaders, to be honest, in a lot of the kind of even higher education landscapes that I've been in. There is significant corruption. There are cost issues. The cost of tuition has outpaced the rate of inflation massively. Nobody gets up and shouts loud enough for these things to happen, to change. So, you know, I do think that I hope Zoomers look around extensively to find the kind of people who matter to them and can demonstrate that values-led learning in deciding for themselves what matters and where they fit in this world. We can make all the projections from Forbes and Indeed and whatever else we want to, but we are not the people who are going to be doing this work. And speaking personally, it matters a lot that that is work that has purpose for you, however much it pays, however much you're filling a skills gap for some piece of industry, okay? So I think just looking at if we zoom out, if you don't mind the pun, across the whole world, we're very highly educated, okay? This varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but broadly speaking, we now have 65% of young people across OECD countries in higher education. I mean, that is extraordinary. So we are talking about the most highly educated generation ever, and that has good, positive consequences. However, inequality in access to higher education persists across all of those countries. Again, in differing dimensions, some deeper rooted, some harder to correct, different ethnicities, different localities, but it persists. And yet still we know that those with a third level degree earn 50% more than those with upper secondary. So, you know, it matters. It matters when the cost of everything is so much higher than it used to be. Health, housing, education, groceries. It matters that you can say, well, okay, purpose is important, but I got to pay the bills. And then we also know that educational attainment is still the best disruptor of that early poverty in childhood and adulthood. So, you know, there are lots of macroeconomics of fixing inequalities, but basically, if you don't want to wait for the macroeconomics or you're not too sure if they'll get to your neighborhood, then education is your best path out. So I had a bit of a look at what Zoomers would say about what matters to them in leadership, okay? And these are the kind of things they say. And as I read them out, I'd like you to reflect on whether this is a style of leadership that you feel you embody. So, you know, the first person said, I'd like leaders to be inspiring, charismatic, engaging, and not afraid to stand against the status quo. So courageous, looking for the best interests of the team and working towards a common goal, not self-serving, not standing up saying, I'm your savior, or I'm the most exciting person in this room. And that would be some of your political leaders, I would say, in recent times. And the next one said, so I would say kind of jumping into like, don't ask people to do something you're not prepared to do yourself. Go out there and get your hands dirty. Stand with the people that you're supposed to be leading, okay? And sometimes, as somebody said in the session I was in yesterday, being a leader means actually being a follower, you know, stepping back and let somebody else stand into the position of leadership. And you have to be courageous and confident to do that. So a lot of this is about how we as older people actually learn to be a little bit braver and let go to the next generation. And the third person said, like, I would like a leader to be someone who cares for someone. So it is about, you know, what we were listening to yesterday. It is relationships of love. It is giving that hope to the next generation and giving them a sense of purpose and direction that they can build on. I want to know that my leader cares for me, okay? And fundamentally trustworthy, somebody who will actually listen to me, someone who's pretty sure that they know what their values are, they're mature, and they understand that as Zoomers, we want feedback. You know, we don't always want a raise. Sometimes we want someone who'll sit down with us and say, you're doing this really well. You could upskill a little here. you know, I'd like you to lead out on the next session so I can give you some tips. Someone who cares enough to actually sit with you and give you that feedback. That's that slide. So introducing the Zoomers then. What are their characteristics? Well, they're extremely diverse, particularly in the US context. You're about 48% non-white students at this stage. The most educated, as I said, heavily environmentally focused, and that's by necessity, you know, and the environment doesn't just mean, you know, what we think of as kind of climate change or all of that. It means where they're living, what their communities look like. Again, purpose-led work. Health and well-being oriented. I mean, speaking as an Irish woman, they drink a whole lot less than my generation, okay? So far, it hasn't killed me, but I'm glad to see my kids are a little bit more sensible. And then the global generation. Like they're 95%, they are digital natives. 95% of them have smartphones. The global generation means they look at the world and they compare themselves to everybody everywhere. You know, that's the kind of news feed they're getting. And that has a huge impact on their mental health and well-being, okay? Of course, it's an incredible resource, but it's also a Pandora's box. And it's a huge cost to their mental health. And, you know, it's great to hear that so many early voters were young people and women. They're politically progressive, this generation. Even those on the right are politically progressive. And that is really heartening for me. And what kind of leadership do they want? You know, they want leaders who seek to influence, but not dictate or direct. People who are results driven, but also explain what results they want, okay? They don't just expect you to smell it from the ether. People who lead by example and who are invested in developing their followers. Confident people who take action, connect with others, are trustworthy and are visionary, okay? Somebody who will model the style of leadership that they actually have already figured out for themselves is the kind of leader they want to be. So how can we lead and prepare Zoomers then? Well, I think we need to be very clear about our mission, but also connect that mission to their personal drives and their values, okay? Because their missions might be different to ours. So, you know, synthesizing our missions and what's important to us with what the next generation who are going to step into our shoes very soon actually want. And then answer their tough questions because they're so highly educated, because they're so diverse, because they're learning in this melting pot. They have loads of tough questions about the things that we messed up. And we have to be brave enough to step up and answer those questions and take responsibility. And then seek to understand, influence, and inspire. And that is really about coaching, not directing, okay? And having the courage to coach and not direct. And we've seen a lot of people over the last 2 days who embody that style of leadership. Less about ego, much less about ego, and more about walking alongside the people who are going to take over. And then I think if there's one thing I feel as a leader myself, I still have the power and position to enable the change that they as young leaders are sparking. So, you know, maybe my job is to step back a bit, let them step into their roles of leadership and use my power and influence to enable their changes and to allow them that freedom as I was allowed the freedom to do in my 20s. And then, as we know from the last few years, the flexibility and the trust to work in different ways, you know, that they can work different hours, that they can work from different locations, and that they don't have to fit into a corporate box that was designed in a different era, okay? So that's the Zoomers, unless Jack wants to add anything.
We're hanging in there. We're hanging in there.
Okay, and then just, I suppose from my previous work in Trinity, we took a lot of this, me and a tremendous team of people of all ages, took a lot of this and applied it to adapting the core practices to the Irish context, you know, and that meant working with the schools and the students to collaboratively identify where the gaps were, okay? What were we not doing? What were their schools not doing? And how could we support them in terms of provision of information, in terms of resources, in terms of opportunities to get off their school and meet people from other backgrounds in different contexts? You know, how could we provide them with academic role models, with peer mentors, with business leaders, with people who would actually help them to shape their own sense of purpose and their own sense of direction? And all of that doesn't mean that we're, you know, the saviors or filling gaps or that there are deficits. It means we are the enablers of these extraordinary young people realizing their full potential and developing their essential skills. So that was the next slide, but now I fast-tracked beyond the next slide and I'm on to the following slide. And I think I'm kind of coming to the close of this. Yeah, good colors. Yeah, and I like this as well. I stole it from one of my young leaders, but yeah, because he was better at doing this stuff than me. So I realized that in the last 5 to 10 years, you know, the people I'm leading are actually better at a whole lot of stuff I used to be good at. So I better move out. But yeah, like I think that this fits together in a neat pie in theory. It's a lot messier in practice. It's not a linear journey, you know, because there are all sorts of external factors around finance, around people's living circumstances that get in the way of a linear trajectory in any stage of education. And, you know, you have to be, with all the best plans and the programs in the world, you have to be prepared to meet the student where they're at and walk the walk with them, and sometimes stop and go backwards and just sit. And, you know, we've certainly had to do that with thousands of our students and some of our teachers as well in the last decade. So I think I'm hoping I'm on the last slide. I'm hoping for your sake as well as mine. This is just, no, this is the penultimate slide. So this is, I suppose, in the schools, one of the things we did was with the data, we collected a lot of data with the schools to show them what was working and what was not working. And then we would make a kind of representational interactive tree that they could click on, students could click on. It was a display in each of their schools, and they could see where their peers or their, you know, former peer leaders had gone on to. And I think that sense of hope and purpose comes from being able to see, you know, close, relatable others who have made it and are doing things that are useful and valuable and values-led. So that's a nice little tool, I guess, that we gave and built with our schools. And so finally, you know, I may have played this last year. I can't actually remember because I was sitting in a bedroom when I was presenting. But this is a beautiful piece that was created for the philanthropic campaign for Trinity College Dublin. And we were kind of blown away that with all of the extraordinary work that goes on in the university, when they were thinking about how to represent the campaign and its meaning, they picked our program. And, you know, this piece is lovely because for me, it shows that sometimes leaders are people who are, you know, inspirational figures from the past. They may not even be alive anymore. Those who give you hope and purpose and mission aren't always people in your workplace. They're not always people in your peer group. Sometimes they're people in your family, and they're the people who keep you going. And so those relationships of love, hope, connection, and purpose come from all different places. And I don't know if we can maybe play the video. It's going to be a bit of a bummer if we can't. But this is the girl represented there is Leah. Is it working? It's on the way. Is Leah Kenny, who was from one of the poorest parts of Dublin and came to us as a student some years ago. She did a kind of intensive year-long program, and then she went into college to read English. And at the time she came, it was a big break in her community because there were very few people coming. Now, actually, since then, her school is a CFES partner, and we've had quite a few more kids come to Trinity. But she had a lonely enough journey through quite an elitist program. And the video, if we were able to see it, shows how the relationship with her granddad is the one that really sustained her and kept her going when she felt like she was going to have to pull out and withdraw from college. So just in closing, I can't actually give the stage to a Zoomer, Leah, to finish my words of so-called wisdom, but I am very grateful to be here today. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share a little bit of the experience we've had in Ireland, and I'm very happy to be presenting with Scott and Maurice. Okay.
Thank you. We want to, we may still may see this video, but we're right at the closing. I want to just close by, and Queen's use and analysis of Zoomers is very helpful for this transition. Yesterday, I asked our CFES Zoomers who were with us, largely from Ticonderoga, 2 questions to help me with this presentation. 2 questions were, what are you going to be doing at age 30? And what do you want to be doing at age 50? Their responses were typical in many ways in terms of identifying at age 30 a career, something changing, making sure that we're living in a safe environment by being an FBI profiler, working on mental health by becoming psychiatrists or psychologists, helping us better manage our finances by becoming accountants, wanting to be in the World Series and be a part of the baseball community. But when I read the responses of what they want to do at age 50, I was surprised and pleased, because the responses spoke not largely to careers, but underneath what they were talking about was quality of life and what they would be doing as human beings. Many of us will laugh at this when I tell you that many of them said at age 50 they'd be retired. But they talked about the things that we all think about after 5: family, changing world problems, expressing themselves, pursuing pursuits that you can do when you're financially comfortable. Isn't that interesting? By age 50, they know that their purpose on this world is not only to provide for themselves, but to be humans and contribute to a larger society. And that taps into many things that are said by our panelists about life, career, and education going forward. It is not simply about a job or work. It is not simply about an experience that you have between 9 to 5. It's the totality of experience. And I think they're expecting a flexibility. I ask you to join me now in a round of applause for our panelists. They've given us a starting point for today to think about how our conference will equip you as educators and mentors and advisors and people who provide resources and all of the things that are necessary to create a robust education community in America. It gives us a framework to move forward. So I just want to close by this quote. I don't know if this is true or not, but by 2050, not only the idea of a job, but life, even that of, but a job for life, but even that of a profession for life might seem old-fashioned. Thank you. Ron?
Again, thanks all our panelists. What a great diversive look at the new beginnings and where we're going. Leroy, panelists, thanks. Well, we're not eating yet. Okay, you've been eating pretty good, haven't you? Right. But we do have a slight break. Sessions start in 15 minutes. Then you'll have another break, and then we're back here at 11 o'clock. Have a wonderful morning, everyone.